Selamat datang di kanal NALAR, mencari makna dalam peristiwa.
Saudara-saudara, pendekatan Foresight, sebuah upaya membentuk masa depan, bukan sekedar memperkirakan atau sekedar meramal masa depan, menjadi sebuah pendekatan yang makin digunakan dalam kebijakan publik. Hari ini, NALAR mendapatkan kehormatan menerima seorang tamu, Profesor Joe Raffets dari Universitas Manchester di Inggris. Profesor Joe dan saya, kami sama-sama belajar mengenai Foresight di Inggris. Profesor Joe Raffets adalah guru, mentor saya ketika saya belajar Foresight kira-kira 20 tahun yang lalu di Inggris. Selain Profesor Joe Raffets, NALAR juga kedatangan tamu Mas Dimas Wisnu Adrianto. Mas Dimas ini adalah seorang dosen di Brawijaya, juga seorang doktor, juga lulusan dari Manchester. Jadi kami bertiga memang dari Manchester, yang di dalam tesis PhD-nya menggunakan pendekatan Foresight untuk melihat perkembangan peri-urban, perkembangan kota dan lingkungan di sekitarnya. Dalam NALAR Talks hari ini, episode ini akan dilangsungkan dalam bahasa Inggris, dan karena itu saya berharap saudara-saudara sekalian bisa ikut menyimak. Joe, thank you very much for joining us here in our channel called NALAR. NALAR meaning in English, literally making sense of things, getting some understanding of what things are going on. So we are very pleased and very happy to have you, and also of course Dimas, given our, I would say, quite long time engagement among us. This is not a serious channel in terms that we have everything prepared with script or with text, but it is more like conversation, so just feel free. What we want to discuss with you and Dimas today is about Foresight, Joe. In Indonesia, Foresight has been around actually for some years. If I can recall correctly, maybe even more than 20 years. But I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but the way I understand it is that Foresight doesn't come as a whole approach. Rather, it comes in piecemeal, in parts. People understand what scenario planning is, maybe they understand and they do SWOT analysis, they do road mapping, but very rarely they use it in a full scale of Foresight. And then in our engagement, I learned now new methods that you develop, synergistic approach, from my engagement with Dimas. So in this conversation today, I really would like you and also Dimas to share with us how you engage with Foresight from the beginning. While you also introduce yourself, who you are, but why Foresight? Why are you interested in this? And then why you get Dimas as your student? Please do.
Okay, thanks Yanwar, a great pleasure to be here. So it's a long story, and if I started right at the beginning, I might say, well, once upon a time, hundreds of years ago, I was an activist.
You're an activist?
Oh yes, I'm a big activist. And if you're an activist, you look at not just the surface of society and say, oh, this is okay, but we could improve. You look at the whole structure. You say, well, we have this capitalist system. This is very good for some and very bad for others. Can we improve? And of course, we all know the answer. If you have a revolution, usually bad stuff happens. That's another story. But we can say, okay, maybe let's focus on what policy is trying to do, and then look not just at the problems which are right on the table, let's fix this problem and that problem, let's look at the bigger picture. And my experiences after many, many years and many, many projects in many countries and many sectors to say, there's a lot of pressure on policymakers to keep life simple, Because if they keep life simple, they can say, oh, you know, we start on Monday and we'll have a result by Friday. And then, you know, we can put it in the box and we collect our salary and maybe get a promotion. And the whole machinery of government works in that way. Okay, you know, I've been in government myself. I'm not criticising anybody who does that. But we have to say, do you know what? There are bigger problems which are not so easy to solve by Friday. And if we even try to think and understand them, we have to use a different kind of thinking process to the one which can fix this little problem by Friday. So this bigger thinking process has a number of different names, but the one we're concerned with here is Foresight. And that focus, the focus of Foresight is really to say, okay, let's think beyond Friday to maybe 10 years, maybe 20, maybe 50 years even, to the longer term. And let's not just think about what is on the table in our specific area, but what is going on in the whole system. The example I often use, and this is where Dimas and his PhD work comes in, is to say, let's look at the land use planning, for example. And the land use planners, yes, they have to think long term, so they may have a 20-year plan. And I've been involved in doing these plans. And the plan basically says, well, housing need by the 20 years' time, it could be X or it could be Y, so let's choose halfway between. And then we will make a plan for that number of houses between X and Y, and everything else can just, you know, take its place. Okay, but we know from experience, historical and actual experience, the city system in whole will not be the same in 20 years from now. Look at the changes we had in the last 20 years. Big things. Digital's changed, demographic change, the whole structure of the economy has changed, infrastructure, and so on and so on. So we're dealing, even in just land use planning, with a highly connected and dynamic system. Now, if we go to our land use planners and say, let's do some foresight, and I've done this many times actually, then they say, oh, okay, yeah, good idea. Let's have a workshop and some nice coffee and, and some nice flip charts and so on. And I've done this many times. And then they say, oh, well, that was a nice workshop, but now we have to get back to our day job. Because, well, that's what they pay us to do, and the law says you must have this regulation and that one, you know, all in place, otherwise you're not doing your duty. So they go back to the day job. Now, if we are successful in the foresight process, we manage to bridge that gap and get some of those ideas and insights from the foresight process back into the day job, and in fact we may even start to help them to transform that day job. Depending on, you know, if they're senior in the system, they have a lot to lose. If they're junior in the system, they have a lot to gain. You know, so you have to kind of choose that level of how the of where people are in that system, and also it's very important to realise the policy system itself is full of problems, tensions, contradictions, pressures, conflicts, even personalities, legal stuff. I did a project for a government agency in the UK last year, Foresight and Systems Thinking in the food sector, and started off very well, and they got the book, so, oh great, yeah, let's do it like it says in the book, great. Oh wow, ideal clients, you know. And then as we go along, with interviews, workshops, etc., the truth comes out. Do you know what, this government agency, it's falling to pieces.
Exactly.
They are struggling to keep up, and they have a budget shortfall, they have a new director, they have legal stuff which they do not know how to do. The food system cannot be defined in a way which then they can act in and find those leverage points. And so I tried, you know, and my small team, you know, but it was not possible in the time available to solve all of their huge problems. Now, maybe we helped in some small way. So, okay, you try this, do it like that, here's the process, here's some tools, so in a small way. But I could also mention more successful examples. in the energy sector, for example.
Also in the UK.
Also in the UK, but I'm thinking now of European examples. Well, we did a foresight on climate change in the Gulf, in Doha. And people said, "You what? Climate change in Doha? You must be crazy." Oil and gas. This is, one of the centres of the oil and gas industry. In fact, the place would not exist without oil and gas. And we're talking about the end of oil and gas. And this was commissioned by, one of the many arms of the government and the Islamic Institute Partnership and so on. Anyway, so again, you can run a 2-day workshop, and again, we're using state-of-the-art methods. And on another occasion, I'll kind of demonstrate these with flip charts and so on. But so we discovered some very interesting things, because in the room we had engineers. I said, well, our living depends on oil and gas, but actually we would like to make the transition. And then we had, economists and NGOs and so on. And the short summary is to say, well, the low carbon transition is all about an economic transition, or as they call it, economic diversification, meaning, from one industry to many industries. Great. Yes. And then we say, how's this economic diversification going to work? Well, if you think about it, we need social diversification. So people had a wild afternoon with flip charts and everything, exploring social diversification in Qatar. Oh my God, what does this mean? Even the ministry people were, off the record, really, into this process. And then, of course, we get to the end of the workshop. Time to get back to the day job, which is completely different, and where economic diversification is difficult and controversial, and social diversification is not on anyone's official agenda, as you know from Qatar and what the World Cup games and all of the debate around that. Anyway, so we have to say, foresight is a very powerful catalyst. If you want to be successful, don't expect the system to change overnight.
No.
Doesn't work
Agree
like
with
that,
you.
usually. You can expect to contribute through collaborative discussion some catalytic effects. This is my honest experience. And by doing that, then you are helping to sow some seeds, or rather helping the people there to sow the seeds of transformation in a positive sense, which then, these seeds have to grow. If you also then say to your client bodies, by the way, this is not a one-off thing, it doesn't stop when the workshop finishes at 4 o'clock. That's just the beginning. So let's make sure there is this then the seed germination period, incubation, etc. And let's just have a check up in 6 months or 12 months or something, and you can save the rest of the contract till then. You have to take the long-term view. You're probably not going to make a lot of money doing this, and if you are, you're probably not doing it for real, in my humble experience. So you do it because you believe in it. And I'll just say also, I have two hats. One is Manchester University, the other is a consultancy in London, SAMI Consulting. You may know them. So we've done strategy and foresight type contracts for a long time, and including a kind of standing contract with the government in the UK, and so on and so on. Because the contract is then a standing contract, meaning they call us in when they need us, and we can wait 6 months, but then we're here again. Then we aim to build up that continuity and that collaborative relationship. Now, again, it's not easy, because the civil servants, they change desk, they change department.
Actually, this is what I want to.
This is a practice, deliberate. Oh, he's been here for 3 years. Oh, we better move him.
Exactly. This is actually
Yeah.
the whole different topic that I would like to explore more later. But then, how do you find this not only interesting, but you seem to also be quite keen in training young people or new academics like Dimas, for example, using Foresight in his PhD. What motivates you? What drives you? Maybe Dimas then can also share his experience. Why he's an urban planner, right? But now he's I can say he's very much into Foresight now. So maybe from your perspective first, Dimas, before Joe.
Well, yeah, the word foresight didn't come even in the earliest stage of my career as a researcher. I mean, my interest was very simple. We plan cities. The world is urbanizing, and it's causing lots of problems: displacement, land conversion, the loss of resources, environmental degradation, and so on. Then my concern was, well, what went wrong with all those plans? Then I found out during my master's study in Australia that there is a thing called complexity science. This is where I encountered in the library. I found this book, City Region 2020. It was written by Joe Roberts. So
That's how you know him.
yeah. It opened my mind a lot that managing urbanization is not, you can't do it just using a positivistic approach, regression, statistic. It's a lot more than that. It's complex. It involves various actors which we need to talk to. And on that process, I found out this very compelling quote of yours. Complex problems requires complex solution.
Complex problem requires complex solution. I see.
There's a law. It's called the law of requisite variety.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Okay.
So there's no single solution for complex problems.
If you have simple solution to complex problems, then the solution is wrong. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. So I was curious with how this method worked. So at the time when I had the chance to do a PhD, and I know where to go. I'm going to find this guy called Joe Roberts, which then on my search, he was at Manchester, so that's the story behind why I did my PhD at the UK. And during the process, I mean, yes, reading books after books, articles after articles, and I found out, cities won't work. I mean, planning the cities won't work. We just rely on statistics. We need to meet the people who have interests, especially when we focus on an area about urban expansion. There's lots of intertwining interests. There's capitalism. There's people who are marginalized from the system. So how to get together? How to put these people together on the same desk? So they'll talk and find what would be the win-win solution for the future of cities. And so then I studied the method of Foresight, and it took me years to actually understand how to do it. On theory, it's nice to read. Then when I tried to go on the field, do the second field work at that time, of course supported by Yanwa. I found out, well, yes, a full day workshop is not enough. Because, even that, on that day, the people in the room have the same uniform. They are all government officials. I can't imagine then how, if private sectors, the local people, the activists are in the same room. I can imagine the complex, but we need that. We can't plan cities without talking to each and every one of these, each and every one of them. So yeah, on the process now, I've done my PhD thanks to both of my supervisors. So I see the end of a PhD as the first stage of learning in real life. Then I, with Yanwar, I had the privilege of supporting him in some Foresight workshops where I entered the true arena of actually learning Foresight by doing it.
These are problems that we do not have solutions for. The world, and as you can see, if anyone is watching the climate change talks, there's a kind of issue between global north and global south. The global north has caused the majority of the problem in the past. The global south wants to have energy and water and all these nice things. And why should they not? And so on. So in rational terms, I see a completely almost impossible situation. And this is, maybe I'm negative, but you know, I have some experience doing this at different levels. And so rationally, the human psychology, and we have experts on psychology in the room, and yourself, you'll know that, you know, the psychology is not geared up for collective action on long-term challenges. Human psychology is often short-term. If you give them the bad news, they say, oh no, I'm in denial, or I have outrage, or simple trauma and depression, and so on, individually and as communities and cultures and societies. So in that situation, there may be no, and there is certainly no optimum that the economists might like to believe, you know, and because things are so much more complex and so much more controversial and charged. At the Glasgow talks in 2001, I was, you know, sounding out these ideas, and inside the room, you had 25,000 people all talking climate change this, climate change that. Okay, outside the room, all around the city, there were people saying climate change equals social change, climate change equals political or cultural change. It means gender relations must change, and you know, the institutions of capitalism, patriarchy, they all must change. Yes. And I was saying, yeah, great, but that could take some time, right? Anyway, so the and then only 10 weeks later, 3 months later, Putin invades Ukraine, and suddenly the world situation got a whole lot more difficult for a whole bunch of reasons. Now, not to go into that, but you can say, okay, so Foresight, I'll tell you my dream, which is to say, yeah, we need and deserve, as soon as we can, a global system of foresight in which the intersecting systems at different levels can be debated, can be visualized and mapped, can be put through this process of synergy and opportunity, creative thinking, and then it recurs back to another level or connects to another sector, and so on and so on. And now we have a lot of information technology which can help in the mechanisms of, you know, transfer and storage and visualization, but it does not solve the essential problem. Now, this is where the Foresight becomes much more than a technical exercise. There are people doing very good technical exercises, you know, and for certain situations this can be really useful. Yes, we need a kind of, you know, literature search. We need, you know, AI which can digest big data. I'm working with the people, still in Moscow, by the way, who have such a system of, you know, AI analysis of 500 million sources. You know, every source on the net is now, you know, being analysed. Now, for in a Foresight sense. Now, but my thinking is, do you know what? The technology can never deliver the vital gap, and the vital gap is in how people think and also how people feel. And again, this is where insights from different disciplines become really important, because if we say, well, the climate change challenge, and there's a dozen others, you mentioned demography, financial instability, the whole disruption of AI, and local issues and
geopolitical
migration.
Conflicts.
Sometime I'll show you my slides on 12 megatrends and so on. So we can say, yeah, climate change maybe is the biggest, but there are other really big ones. And again, it's not to say, oh, let's get a team of experts and get them to do the ultimate foresight study on climate change. No. I mean, that could be useful, but it will not be the ultimate one. It's much more interesting and I think useful and positive to talk about the foresight approach as, not a bunch of experts, but rather, at the end of the day, 8 or so billion people on one small planet, somehow or other, there are ways to engage the imagination and the potential for thinking ahead of
so
each
you
and
see
every
foresight
one.
as a system rather than
Very much a system.
rather than exercises.
But you need exercises. You have to make it tangible.
But making foresight like a mindset, making foresight like a system where people behave, where people or government make policy.
Yeah.
So foresight as policy rather than foresight for policy.
Foresight as policy exactly puts the finger on it. Because then we say, okay, what is this policy? How is it working? What are the objectives of the policy? Yeah. I think in your writings you have explored, the functions of government. Yeah. Is the function of government to do stuff or to tell other people to do stuff?
Exactly.
Is the function of government to raise taxes and then spend them again? Or is the function of government to enable a thriving, prosperous economy? And we could say, yes, actually, it's the latter. The government does not exist to serve itself. That's news. So then you say, okay, if foresight for policy is very important because we cannot change the world in one day. Foresight as policy is a very interesting new perspective, I would say. Now, what if I asked you, for example, in 15 seconds, elevator pitch, what is foresight as policy?
Then I would answer something like this: that foresight should be like a main framework of thinking, would be the main reference when policymakers design and make their policy. So it is not just, of course, evidence-based is clear, but also the whole process of understanding the evidence, the ability to identify the driving forces, ability to create or to develop some scenarios, and that become like enriching the policy cycle. Because at the moment, I think, forgive me if I'm wrong, and also maybe I'm rather outdated, but what I understand from the policy process is rather linear. We have problem, we got the evidence, we got the data, and hopefully the data will help us formulate the policy, although often the policy comes from the political decision. Sometimes they ignore the data, sometimes they ignore the evidence, right? And then they hope that things will change. Pretty much linear. What I understand as from foresight as policy would be taking this not as a linear way, but understanding it as a cycle. You do this, you sort of experiment, or you try this, you look at the impact, you understand the driving force, and then you update your policy. It may sound normal in I would say developed economies, but in a developing economies or young democracy like Indonesia, that's pretty much different. So we don't have policy sandbox here. Often the policy making process or processes are behind closed doors. Suddenly the government would announce this policy, this regulation, and people would just have to follow. And then after a big, say for example, disagreement or through social media protest, then the government changed the policy. So rather than, so this is what I think actually.
Yeah. That was a bit more
No,
than
I know
15
that, I know. Yeah,
That's okay.
so there, yeah.
Yeah. So then talking about policy and different models of policy and policy development, and when you talk about policy, you say, okay, what is policy for? It may be for the running of public services, it may be for regulation, it may be for big investments and infrastructure.
Maybe for monitoring evaluation.
It may be for shaping the contours of society. And that is a very, very political thing.
Yes,
and we can see everywhere, you know, more or less every country, the assumed, how do we say, social democratic end of history, as it was called after the fall of the Berlin Wall and so on, and the collapse of the communist USSR, etc. We have now a new world order, and the USA is at the head of the table, and everybody will be more prosperous and happy. And then it didn't quite work out, which I think you know in Indonesia, difficult decade there. And then we had our own version in 2008, and then we got the pandemic, and so the world, you know, stumbles from one crisis to the next, more or less. And we could say, okay, is there anything we can learn about, you know, how to do policy more successfully, how to, you know, manage the opportunities of a fast-changing society, how to avoid the crises which come up so regularly, about once a decade on average, and that is maybe increasing now with climate change, etc. So if you say, okay, just take urban planning as an example at random, you know, because we have planners in the room, and I was an architect and planner myself, and we can say, okay, on the, you know, land use planning, really, is that so difficult? Can we just get some, you know, highly trained professionals? They will know what to do and where stuff is on the map. And no, it doesn't really quite work out like that. So then we say, okay, at what level in the policy process in urban and rural planning do we use the Foresight principles and methods? What would it look like? Will it cost more money? This is the first question on any policymaker's mind. Might it even save money? That's good news if we can prove it. What kind of evaluation process is most useful for this? And the word evaluation is really important here, because, you know, this is how you can put your finger on how policy learns. And, you know, if you saw policy learning, oh, that sounds a bit weird, you know. Evaluation, okay, we need to know, because next time we can spend the money better and use less money to get more more impact or more outcome, hopefully. Now, so of course it's difficult because land use planning is a long-term thing. You can't just press the button and see the result tomorrow. And even if you see a new building, well, you know, what's the impact of this new building? Or a new area of town. So we have then to say, okay, building an expanding or, you know, transforming urban system, either we leave it to the real estate, you know, elite to meet with, you know, the planners behind closed doors, as you say, and they will decide how the plan looks, and then say, okay, here's some new housing, great, and so on. Or we connect this to what is already emerging at every level, villages, communities, neighbourhoods, districts, etc. In many parts of the world, we now have a whole new deal. You know, people want to be in the room. We need a set of rather bigger rooms. Obviously, you know, I live in Manchester with about 3 million people. You can't get 3 million people in one physical room, you know. So how do you do this? Well, there are ways. You build circles and networks, you know, thematic networks, local networks, networks of interest. As you know, in my writing for a long time, I've been talking about the multiversity. The multiversity is a university plus all the others. And every town more or less has a university, some have quite a lot. And the universities go, oh yes, we're the experts, we know everything, more or less, and not like those ignorant people out there. But, you know, only down the road, there are the business people. So, yeah, we know how to run things, we do stuff, but they're not connected very much, you know. And then down the next road, there are the policy people. So, of course, then there are 3 million citizens all around. Most of them feel out of the loop. Oh, you know, we're not included. Nobody listens to us.
Exactly.
And we don't get the services we need, and this area is going down, and so on and so on. So again, we have to say, how do we seriously get 3 million people into this discussion, and how do we then make sense of the results? And again, this is not something you can finish by Friday and write a final report. It's a process of ongoing.
True.
And this is, you know, foresight as policy.
Yep, true. I would like to now turn to Dimas, because what you mentioned, the last 1 minute that you just said, Joe, is very true in the, I would say, challenge when we are building our new capital. So, I don't know whether Dimas has updated you or not, but I just finished the first book on New Capital.
Great.
It is an edited book, so I'm one of the co-editors, and Dimas contributes in one chapter. And we discussed what you just mentioned, how we connect the citizens in a city, in a settlement area, with policymakers, with businesses, and so on and so forth. And I would like to get Dimas' perspective. He is the real urban planner. I'm an engineer, Joe, and then I try to be a policymaker. But he is the real
psychologist, no?
No. My first degree was industrial engineering.
Oh, okay.
My second degree was informatics, information systems. But I was supervised or co-supervised by a psychologist from Victoria. And then, you know, I did my PhD in innovation. But Dimas here is the real planner. So what do you think, Dimas? Just, of course, like you. How do you see the new capital project, the Indonesia's urban planning from this perspective?
Well, yeah, I mean, the establishment of the idea to relocate the city should not just be something that's physical. I mean, yes, the fact is that we, with many reasons, we need to relocate the new capital, the capital city to a new place. But what we see as an urban planner, we want to make this as a momentum to also examine and change the way we plan cities. But of course, there are criticism on the process. In the first place, the capital city, we know because of time and so on, the process has not yet involved efficiently the many people that we need to talk to. So the decision was made already. The regulation has been ratified, and we must execute this. But of course, it's never too late to improve things. I mean, what my view on building a city from scratch, of course, there's opportunities to build and design the city the way we would like to be. But of course, we must also simultaneously apply a continuous improvement in the system of urban planning in Indonesia. So as we know, because you just mentioned about land use planning and how difficult it is on the table. In the Indonesian spatial planning system, we revise the plan every 5 years. And the reason being is we need to keep up with the dynamics. But it's quite disturbing to know that, well, on the process of reviewing a plan, there's a process, a stage where we calculate the deviation, what went wrong, the inconsistencies and so on. And what is typically found is there's always a huge gap between what was planned and what actually happened on the field. So we have a certain percentage that defines what we plan didn't work. And because of the complexity of the field, things change. So the question is, well, until how long again we are doing this? The plans will never work because what's actually doing the development is very different from those who are constructing the plans. We didn't talk to the developers enough. We did not involve the local people who their livelihoods might be impacted from the process of development. So my hope is, while we are setting up and ongoing with the development of the new capital, I also have a hope that this is a new era for a more democratic process of urban planning in Indonesia. Yeah.
You know, Joe, what I imagine is to get a foresight exercise for and in the new capital. I don't know how, but we will try.
It should be a leader. It should be an inspiration to other people around the world.
We really would like to offer this and to introduce foresight to we have the so-called authority body for the authority, we call it Otoritas Ibu Kota Negara, meaning capital city authority, led by an official at the level of minister, reporting directly to the president. We really would like to introduce using foresight, especially the synergistic methods that Dimas has and you, of course, have put in practice. I really like to see that because, you know, the new capital stands on basically it was forest. It was in south of Kalimantan, and we talk about a number of indigenous people who, you like it or not, when you build a city there, it affects them, right?
Yeah.
It involves moving huge number of civil service from Java to Kalimantan. It involves building new infrastructure, new physical building, and I think that kind of future needs to be collectively shaped, right? Rather than just, you know, one way top down from the government, no matter how good it seems.
Maybe the consultants have a rather big role.
Yep.
And you know, some people say, the world is now run by the big four consultancies.
But will you let the world be run by consultant?
Yeah.
I don't. Not just consultant, right? I mean,
but
this is the book that you give me.
They've been to Harvard or the London Business School. What's wrong with that?
We can debate this overnight.
But yes, I mean, completely. Now, I think if there is a case for saying, okay, and if that is even worth talking about, maybe we should go one step further and say, okay, let's think this through. Let's kind of write it down. Well, I think we need a couple of meetings or workshops with people who are already possibly thinking along similar lines. You know, so that in that sense, this is a fantastic opportunity.
Indeed.
And if I can work with you guys to help do that, I'd be very happy. You know,
we will let you know, of course, when the opportunity comes. We really want to get our way now to introduce foresight. Joe and Dimas, I know that it's already nearly 1 hour, or maybe it's nearly 1 hour now. But if I may, few couple of things, if you like, to share your perspective and thoughts. You have vast experience in doing foresight across the world, I would say, right? Many countries, many contexts, many economies. What do you think the most important factors that define the success or failure of foresight exercises, especially when it comes into policy? Because this is the background. As I mentioned earlier, foresight actually is not new for Indonesia. But what I see, what I observe is that it fails to be followed up. We have the exercises, we develop the scenarios, we even have the roadmaps, but then that's done.
Yeah.
We had one before the end of, or during the end of the New Order era, so the end of Suharto's dictatorship at that time. That's about the Indonesia 2010, something like that. But it didn't fly. We had Indonesia's technology foresight back in early 2000, if I'm not mistaken, 2005, 2008. Again, it didn't take off. And then lately, with Dimas and with my teams in here in NALAR and also in CIPG, we try to promote. And we are still not sure to what extent it will be successful or it will fail. So that's the background of my questions. What do you think the most important factors that determine the success or the failure of Foresight citizen?
And first I would just observe, Foresight is also very, I think, successful in Singapore, in Malaysia.
Singapore, Malaysia?
Not far from here.
Yeah.
And China is another story. But let's say, so yeah, there is a track record in Southeast Asia.
Yep.
Yeah, and we look to this from our side of the world. You know, oh, great, they're doing good stuff. Now, whether the Foresight is successful, big question. And I would say, from quite long and sometimes hard experience, the challenge is much bigger than it looks.
Yep.
You can get a contract. Oh, let's do a Foresight on healthcare in Indonesia. Okay, great. We'll get the data, have some workshops, make some visions, scenarios. Here's a roadmap. Great. You can more or less do this by Friday if you really try. But yeah, the situation of healthcare in Indonesia huge, and there's all these pressures this way and that way, and it's not easy to even understand what is going on, let alone make a really useful contribution, one that is going to stick and embed in that huge system.
I see.
So my honest advice is to say you have to find a way to embed in that system, either by having a long-term relationship and setting up a Foresight unit, in the health system of Indonesia, maybe. Also by skills development and capacity building. So you bring healthcare people into this organization or something like that. You send people from this organization into the healthcare system to work as interns or whatever. So they learn from the inside, oh, how does this thing really work? It's not difficult to do that at the lower levels. It's maybe more challenging at the higher levels, and this is where you need friends, people who understand what you're trying to do, and maybe just say, open the door, so, oh yeah, I think that's possible, try this, and here's some funding, and so on. And this is my experience now, because to make it work really well, you have to build those relationships, and then we have, it's a deep collaboration, say, between the people who are specialised in the Foresight activity, and they have, a bag of methods and tools, and the people out there, frontline, trying to deliver a health service every day, under all this pressure, and say, oh yeah, well actually, we know how to do this, because, we have this collaborative thing. So that is, now, can I point to examples where this is working? Well, yeah, in London we do have a National Health Development unit, and depending on who you ask, yes, it's very successful. They do good things. Of course, the health service is still under huge pressures from above, like money and standards and so on. But you cannot solve all the problems in one bag. Education, higher education in particular, even our government cabinet office, the kind of senior, the senior level of civil service. Yes, they have a Foresight unit, or let's say policy innovation unit, which draws from the Foresight thing, the complexity thing, the systems thinking, and so on. even in our, and the UK is in a terrible mess, I have to say, but, great things are going on behind the scenes mostly. And the Government Office of Science is continuing, to provide, technical studies which then feed into that process of Cabinet Office policy innovation, etc. Now, on the ground, 99% of the population are, completely unaware of this. But then you look at what other things are going on. We have citizens' assemblies, we have forums, we have neighbourhood circles. All kinds of stuff is going on at every level in every sector. Most of it disconnected from the others. In rare examples, connections are being made. Food systems are one very, I think, active area where connections are being made. The NGOs, the academics, the consumers, the producers, the suppliers, the regulators, and so on and so on. A Foresight-based national food strategy came out. The government kind of, said, very nice, thank you, and then proceeded to do the opposite. But, that's not the end of the story, because all the, as I say, the NGOs, the suppliers, producers, and so on, are continuing to shape that system with this in mind. Anyway, enough said.
So what matters is the connection among or across those different stakeholders, the connection that really works.
Is there a secret button that you press, you mean?
Yeah.
I'm not aware of one.
But at this
it's hard work.
Yes.
Sometimes there, sometimes there is
of course, we
some
need,
kind of catalyst.
Yeah.
Information technology does
Clearly,
help,
yes.
no doubt. Platforms, social media, WhatsApp groups, and so on. But now, of course, we all have more messages than we can handle, so that's another kind of problem. But I do see right in front of us a fantastic transformation in progress. It's very easy, for policymakers, to do their day job and they actually ignore what is going on. I work on smart cities, and there's a smart city unit in Manchester, doing a few experiments, with light bulbs and so on. But they seem to ignore what is actually going on. Massive transformation with social media. So again, we have to kind of help them to join these dots. And where the Foresight insight comes in, this is another word to be, insight, is, we in this room and others, we see these bigger pictures. It's up to us to help find ways to help them to also see.
So, not only identifying the actors, those who are involved, but also making the connection, connecting the dots, but making sure the connections work. Well, not just policy. Dimas, you want to say anything more?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Joe. Connecting the dots is the big thing here. Second is maybe the commitment.
Commitment.
Yeah, for those who are willing to do foresight as policy, and then the result to make it as policy, and how we ensure it is well implemented in the field. But for me, the highest, the biggest what matters is about commitment for innovation. So many times we felt that we don't have room to innovate. We are too scared to innovate. We are not. We don't believe that by trying something new, we can change things. So this is what my experience talking to the local government, especially in Indonesia. Briefly introduced Foresight and at least introduced them partially about scenario mapping according to Synergistics. They're kind of like, well, yeah, great. Now you come up with something new that we need to do. Well, yes, this might work, but I'm not sure. I'm not paid to do something new here. And if we tried it and we failed, then it will be more difficult to fix it, because then we have to do the same agenda again next year and the new budget system, blah blah. So I think it's what determines, or the key determine, what the key component for a successful foresight practices, commitment to innovation, and believing that doing something new can make a difference.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Joe and Dimas. I think it's very, very, to me, insightful conversation. Not only interesting, but also reminds me a lot of things. As someone from academic work, working in the policy making processes, I understand the tension between, what we as academic thinks and what policymakers actually do. And sometimes they do not really, talk to each other, I would say. And this is where I see the opportunity for foresight to connect even these two different worlds. So again, Joe, thank you very much for your time here.
Thanks.
And enlightening all of us with your experience, your stories from an activist, becoming an academic. Now you are campaigning synergistic approach in Foresight in order to connect people to push for more transformation. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Saudara-saudara, demikianlah perbincangan kita dengan Profesor Joe Ravetz dan Mas Dimas Wisnu Adrianto mengenai Foresight, mengenai pendekatan yang disebut dengan synergistic approach. Kita sudah bicara, kita sudah berdiskusi banyak mengenai bagaimana Foresight digunakan dalam pembuatan kebijakan dari pengalaman Joe, Mas Dimas, hingga bagaimana kita melihat sebenarnya peluang Foresight membantu proses kebijakan di Indonesia dalam berbagai aspek pembangunan, termasuk pembangunan IKN misalnya. Bagaimana kita memastikan bahwa masa depan itu dibentuk bersama-sama oleh warga bersama dengan pemerintah, oleh warga bersama dengan pembuat kebijakan. Bahwa masa depan itu bukan satu arah, bukan hanya dibentuk oleh mereka yang sedang memegang kuasa, tetapi menjadi tanggung jawab bersama. Jadi kalau kita mau bicara lebih jauh mengenai Indonesia masa depan, mengenai visi Indonesia ke depan, saya kira dari perbincangan ini, Foresight mungkin bisa menawarkan satu hal, bukan hanya mengenai cara pandang, bukan hanya mengenai cara membuat kebijakan, tetapi mengenai bagaimana kita membentuk bersama-sama Indonesia di masa depan. Karena Indonesia masa depan adalah milik kita bersama. Terima kasih sudah menyaksikan video ini. Semoga kita bisa menemukan makna dan pemahaman yang lebih dalam bersama NALAR.